Chapter 8. Julio. The siren of the ambulance was the next thing I heard. High on the side of my head, it felt like my scalp had been opened with a shovel. In the hospital, they shaved around the wound, cleaned it, and stitched it up. I had never been in a hospital before, never had stitches before. I was frightened as a baby rabbit at the bottom of a bucket. I was too afraid to answer the doctor's questions. The doctor said it would take me a while to get my memory back, but he was wrong about that. I hadn't lost my memory, and I knew why a policeman was keeping an eye on me from the door. The doctor said they were going to hold me at the hospital until it was safe for me to travel. I sneaked out 3 hours later when the policeman stepped away to get something to eat or visit the bathroom. Fortunately, I still had my shoulder bag, even my crumpled straw hat. I spent the day where it felt safest, at Mazatlan's most crowded streets. Over and over, I wondered if I should just give up and try to go back home. But that wouldn't solve anything. Somehow I had to get to El Norte. Late in the day, I headed for the train yards. There was no way around it. I had to get back on a train. This time, I had to be smarter and hope for better luck. In and around the yards, there were many places to hide and many people hiding. At dusk, a train showed signs of pulling out at any second. Everyone ran, like a flock of birds bursting from the trees and flying to the same wire fence. By the grace of God, the security guards stood by and watched the stampede without even letting on that they noticed. I was about to join the many people running for the empty flat cars, but I was wary of joining them. Wouldn't they be the first to get kicked off? Just then, a boy at my elbow veered off towards some flat cars stacked with automobile carriers. I sprinted to catch up, then panted, Mind if I come with you? Why not? He called as we ran. He had a wide, friendly smile and wild hair that stood straight up. He was my size, my age, with the same dark brown skin. I watched as he climbed onto a coupling and jumped down onto the ground on the other side. I did the same. The train lurched into motion. Hurry, he yelled over his shoulder. I know a trick. I ran to catch up, afraid I'd lost my chance to catch this train, looping along in the shadow of one of the towering enclosed automobile carriers. The boy sized it up as if picking out a horse. The vehicles, 3 across and 3 high, showed through narrow gaps in the metal siding. The metal doors at the ends of the carrier were locked shut. The wild-haired boy sprang from a ladder and climbed. I hated the idea of hanging on to another ladder for miles on end. But now I had no choice, not if I was going to catch this train. Too late now to do anything but leap and grab and climb up after him. As I climbed, the train picked up speed. 3 mojados were running alongside, still hoping to get on board, but the train was already moving too fast. Disappointment had written large on their faces. With all the racket and motion, my stomach churned and my head swam. I had nothing to tie myself on with. What was to keep me from falling? Keep coming, amigo, called a voice from above, so full of confidence. He scampered the rest of the way up the ladder, then disappeared over the top. What in the world? High on the ladder, high as an eagle's nest, I looked over the roof. My wild companion was nowhere to be seen. Drop your bag first, called his echoing voice. Holding on for dear life to the top of the ladder, I leaned over a narrow opening. It wasn't so far to the floor, an easy drop if the train was standing still. To get inside, I was going to have to climb on top of the train first, and it was swaying like a tree in a windstorm. I looked away for a second, and that was a mistake. The ground was a long, long way down, and everything was a blur. My legs began to tremble. You can do it, called the encouraging voice. I don't have any choice, I thought. I threw my bag inside, then climbed onto the roof of the carrier. For a second, I thought the wind would blow me off, but I kept my balance and got down fast. My hands held, my legs cooperated, and I dropped to safety in front of a brand new Suburban. Easy as can be, cried the boy, whose bright smile was gleaming in the darkness. So were the brand new Suburbans as they caught some light from above and from slits in the metal walls. How do you like it? Pretty good? No? How come no police today? No soldiers? Sometimes it's hot and sometimes it's not. How far can we take this train? All the way to Nogales, I'm pretty sure. These cars are heading to Phoenix. That's what I heard. Hey, there's some blood showing through your hat. Are you bleeding? Maybe, I said. I took my hat off carefully. Bleeding, but not that bad, he reported. Got some stitches under there, I bet. Radical look, how it's shaved all around the bandage. How do you like mine? Your what? My haircut. I took another look. I remembered an animal I had seen in a book. It's wild, I said. Sticks up like porcupine quills. His smile vanished. Like when a porcupine is afraid? My head looks like the rear of a frightened porcupine. Is that what you're saying? Kind of. I mean, it looks really good. He started laughing. I like that, Stitches. That's a good one. How did you get hurt? Jumped off a train last night. Lots of police and soldiers. I was on the same train. You jumped too soon. You weren't the only one to get hurt. Did you hear about the woman from El Salvador? No, nothing. They say she was on her way to New York City to work in a restaurant. She lost both her legs, but was still alive when they took her away. I heard she has 3 small children back home. It could have happened to you. You must be new at this. First time. It's simple. Don't try to get on or off the train. It's moving if the train is moving faster than you can run. Last year, I saw a man get killed in 4 pieces. A couple of weeks ago, some Maras threw me off, and the train was going way too fast. I got lucky. I bounced like a rubber ball. Who are Maras? Where are you from anyway? I hesitated. Chiapas, I said. No way. Why not? If you were from Chiapas, you know what Maras are. So what are they? Tell me first, where are you really from? Near Silao, where they put together these Suburbans. So how come you said you were from Chiapas? Because when I say I'm from Guanajuato, nobody believes me. I would have if you gave me a chance. I was born in Chiapas. So you're Mexican. That's what you're telling me. No identification. That's the problem. I feel like the whole Mexican army is after me. They seem to think I'm from Guatemala. I'm Julio, the boy said, and stuck out his hand. Julio from Honduras, a small village outside of San Pedro Sula. Victor, I said as I offered mine. Victor from Mexico, a small village outside Silao. Don't lie to me again, Mano, okay? Promise. You're not very good at it. You're the worst liar I've ever met. So what are those Maras you were talking about? The biggest and worst gang there is. If you're from Guatemala or Chiapas, they've taken over the railroads. They rob everybody who's trying to get across the border into Mexico. You got any money? 80 centavos. I picked a rich one. How do you expect to get across the wire without coyote money? I don't know, to tell you the truth. Do all these people on these freight trains have coyote money? Almost all of them. You have to be real crazy, real stupid, or really poor to cross the border without a coyote. What about you? I'm all 3. It's going to be a long ride, Victor. Let's make ourselves comfortable. Julio said we were going to search for keys to the Suburbans. They must be hidden somewhere. It was too much trouble for the factories to send this keys separately to El Norte. My best friend's father-in-law works at the plant in Silao, I said. So? He just does. Weren't you about to say that he told you where they hide the keys? Nothing that helpful. They might be anywhere, Julio said as he slid under the first car. I went to my knees and started searching the next one. It was like trying to milk a goat in the pitch dark. After searching behind the grill, the license plates, and the underside of the engine, I felt a bump on the side of the frame near the back, under a smooth strip of tape. A minute later, we were inside the vehicle, enjoying the comfortable, plastic-covered seats. Julio, in the driver's seat, turned the electricity on, but not the motor. He turned the radio on and started punching through the channels. "What kind of music do you like?" "Anything. Ranchera, mostly." "I like ranchera." He kept punching until he found that loud, clear signal from Radio XCG in Monterey. "There, we have music. Everything is lively and good. You got any food? Got any water?" "Got water." "I don't believe you. You think you're going to just fly across the border like a bird or a bat? What is your plan?" "Every man is entitled to make a kite out of his pants." "That's a good one. Where'd you get that?" "From my father. He's dead." "Well, mine isn't, but sometimes maybe he wishes he was. You can't eat if you can't work." Julio must have found a hidden switch. Suddenly his seat went way back, almost like a bed. He laughed and pretended he was snoring, then grew quiet as he drifted off. For the time being, getting to know each other was over. I figured out how to make my own seat go back and fell asleep despite my hunger, the pounding of my wound, and the fact that I had to pee. I woke to the sound of the car door opening. Julio climbed out and climbed over a crack in the floor. I could hear his stream splashing on the car below. I started laughing and he did too. He said to cut it out. He couldn't concentrate. He got back in and I left to do the same. When I got back, I asked him what to do about the other kind. He said not to even think about it. "How did you know about getting inside here?" I asked him. "A guy told me." "Ever done it before?" "Never." "Been to the States before?" "Last year, but it wasn't easy. I would have crossed into California, San Diego, but I heard they built a metal wall all across there. I decided to try and find my aunt and uncle instead in Texas." "Was it easy to cross into Texas?" "Are you kidding? It took me 8 tries." "What is it really like in the States?" "You'll have to see for yourself. It's impossible to explain. It's so different. It's like another world." "Is it good? Is it bad?" "It's both." Julio didn't like to talk about it, same as my father. "Papa," I once asked my father, "why is El Norte so rich?" He only smiled and made a joke. "God gives money to the wealthy because without it, they would starve to death." I got back to the subject of crossing. "Julio, why are you trying to cross into Arizona this time?" "Because everybody's saying Arizona is the way to go. Its border is so long, so full of deserts and mountains. The migra are like 100 cats trying to catch 1,000,000 mice." "You know about La Migra, I take it." "American immigration, U.S. Border Patrol. That much I do know. What kind of work will you try to do this time?" "Anything. I'll wash dishes in a restaurant, sack groceries, do landscaping or construction. I'll even pick lettuce. I'm a good worker, and they're always looking for good workers up there. The truth is, they know we work harder than they do. Grab my backpack off the back seat, will you? I'm busy driving." "What do you need?" "Food and water. You hungry?" Chapter 9, Nogales. I had never understood before what a long, long way it was to the border. The train continued on through the night and into the next morning and afternoon. Whenever it stopped, we knew we were in danger. We would turn the radio off and listen to the sounds from outside. Once we heard people running and the shouts of police ordering them to stop, I was sure that our hiding place would be searched. But it wasn't. After half an hour, the train was moving again. Inside our Suburban, there was hardly any rocking motion and practically no noise. I rested easy again. Julio was pretty sure that the carrier wouldn't be searched until the final inspection before the crossing of the border, when every nook and cranny of these vehicles would be searched for people and drugs. I asked how we would know when it was time to get out, and Julio said we would wait until a stop lasted for an hour. Until then, we wouldn't even poke our heads out to see where we were. How will you know it is Nogales? Because I've been told what it looks like. It's a city spread all over the hills, looking down into Nogales, Arizona, which they say is much smaller. There's a metal fence, more like a wall, in between. How is that possible to be looking down from Mexico into the States? Aren't they above us? Listen, I'm telling you what I heard. Here's something else. There are 2 really long tunnels that run under the border. They carry the storm waters that run off the Mexican hills. That's how I'm going to cross. You can come with me if you want. Wouldn't you drown? The tunnels are dry most of the time. People live in them. That's what I heard. Street kids. Corlos. Gangs? They take people through for money. If you know the password, they'll just let you go by. Do you know the password? Forward and backward. What about the police on the Mexican side and the border patrol on the American side? Don't they try to stop people from crossing to the tunnels? It sounds too good to be true. Have you been living under a stone? On the Mexican side, the police are easily bribed. Who bribes them? The coyotes. Who else? In this case, it would be the cholos. As for the American side, who knows? Maybe the Border Patrol doesn't watch their end of the tunnels all the time. Maybe they get paid off too. Sounds like you have it all figured out. You never have it all figured out. Sometimes something unexpected always happens. You do what you can and hope for good luck. Did you have good luck once you finally got to your aunt and uncle's in Texas? At first I did. I worked 5 months at a turkey farm. Doing what? Sweeping, mopping, shoveling, chopping heads, plucking feathers, pulling the guts out. Hard work, mano, but I was good at it. I was able to make good money and send hundreds of dollars home to my parents, for them and my brothers and sisters. But then the police came. My aunt and uncle were always fighting. Their neighbors got tired of it. Did you get to keep your job? Are you kidding? They went to jail, and so did I. We were all illegal. If you stay out of trouble up there, they'll leave you alone. They need the workers. But if you get into trouble, your life is like a tin can that gets kicked down the road. They deported you back to Honduras? Eventually on an airplane when a migra escort just for me, if you can believe it. What of you? I was flying like a bird above the clouds sometimes. Even when you are below the clouds, you're still so high that the cars and houses look tiny. I can only imagine. What did you mean they deported you eventually? They kept me in jail for 4 months. Really? Really. 2 months in the juvenile detention, and then it got so crowded, I had to wait in the county jail. Why it took so long, I have no idea. That jail was a scary place, mano. Tejanos, Mexicans, Central Americans, blacks, Anglos. It was like 5 different animals dropped into a barrel. Anglos? I thought all the gabachos were rich. What were they doing in jail? You don't know very much about El Norte. What were the guards like? They were mean. They liked to throw the lights on in the middle of the night, get you out of bed, search your cell while a vicious dog growled and snapped at you. They let the dog come within this close of biting you, and then they pulled him back. So here you are, heading north again? What else? You never go hungry there once you find work. When I told my father I was going back to El Norte, he said, if you want to go, go. In Honduras, on days he can find work, all he makes is $1.50 American, and that's construction. Sometimes when I could get away with it, I could make $2 stealing bananas from the company plantation and selling them in San Pedro Sula. If you're a kid from the village, forget about a real job. How much did you make in El Norte? $6 an hour, 10 hours a day. 60 American dollars in a day? Is that possible? Believe it. That's why I'm going back. What did your mother say? She said, Okay, go try. God bless you. I found a seashell yesterday that I'm going to give her eventually. Who knows when? In between trains, you travel to the ocean? Guess what? Mastalon is on the ocean. I didn't know it was that close. I always wanted to see the ocean. I missed my chance. It was dark, early evening, when we finally climbed out through the roof of the automobile carrier. Julio was sure we had reached Nogales. We were able to sneak through the train yards, past warehouses and abandoned boxcars with families living inside. A little girl had her hand out begging. We soon reached the lights of the city with the border wall in sight. The traffic was all backed up. We're waiting to get through the port of entry gates, Julio said. Come on, let's take a look around. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't been with Julio. He had never been in Nogales either, but from the way he carried himself, you would never believe it. The air smelled of broiling meat and onions from the taco carts and the diesel fumes. That much was like Silao. But there were many more gabachos, fresh from the States. They were flocking to the slopes down the street. Taxis were honking at kids racing through the traffic to beg work from Mexicans returning from the American Nogales, arms full of shopping bags. Julio explained that some people had the documents to cross back and forth. With me at his elbow, Julio threaded his way through the crowds and the tourist shops, the pharmacies, past some hotels with campesinos spilling out the lobbies onto the streets. I told him that in Silao, farmers never stayed in hotels. Before they stitched up your head, Victor, did some of your brain spill out? Those are mojados. They haven't crossed the border yet, but can't you see how wet they are? The ones lined up at those payphones over there are talking with relatives and labor contractors on the other side. See, that one with the straw hat over there, talking to the slick guy, that's a leader of a Mojado group, bargaining with a coyote, getting the bad news about how much it's going to cost. Ahead, people were milling around an ice cream cart. A girl bought a chocolate-covered frozen banana on a stick. My eyes followed it to her mouth. All I'd eaten since my mother's tamales was a can of stew Julio had shared with me on the train. I closed my eyes and imagined the taste of the chocolate-covered frozen banana. My stomach felt like a small animal with claws. But that was nothing new. We kept moving. We walked along a narrow cobbled street lined with homes, mostly of concrete. Every window was barred with heavy wrought iron. The yard walls were high and studded with broken glass. The border rap thumbing from car speakers set me on edge, and so did the number of police, all different kinds. Nogales wasn't anything like Silao. How were we going to find a safe place to sleep? We walked around the Plaza de Toros, our eyes on the bullfighting murals. The entrance of the arena was swarming with street kids. We came to a small park wedged between streets with heavy traffic, where kids darted out to wash windshields at the stoplights. In the center of the park, taqueras and other carts ringed the bronze statue of a man whose head was a bathroom for pigeons. Not far away, we looked over a guardrail into the yawning opening of a huge concrete storm tunnel. Look, we've already found one, Julio said. About 7 feet high and twice as wide, the tunnel drained a dry wash that ran down from the hills. All around the mouth of the tunnel, the concrete was spray painted with graffiti, names, slogans that cursed the police, symbols I couldn't read, and the words Los Vampiros. The entrance was poorly lit, but we could see kids hanging around outside and others disappearing inside. One of the kids, sitting in the shadows of a broken slab of concrete, held a paper bag to his face, like a horse with its muzzle in a feed bag. What in the world is he doing? I asked Julio. You really don't know? He spray painted in there. Now he's inhaling the fumes. His brains are cheese. We turned away from the city center. Narrow lanes led up the gullies and into a neighborhood on the hillside where dogs barked. And the headlights of cars fell on kids kicking balls in a rain of dust. Some of the houses were made of concrete blocks or adobe bricks and looked like my family home. Others were stitched together of boards, plywood, tar paper, mud, and cardboard, with roofs of metal sheeting weighted by tires, rocks, even wheelbarrows. A strong windstorm might blow them down. A heavy rain, and they might slide into the gullies. Below the windows, the tall metal border wall, topped with barbed wire, was bathed in stadium lights from one end of the city to the other. On the American side, a strip of bar ground was patrolled by green and white trucks that Julio said were the border patrol. Kids were throwing rocks from our side of the wall down onto the American side, trying to hit one of the migrant trucks. We kept climbing in search of a place to hide and sleep. We followed the edge of a landslide full of garbage. At last we found a patch of hillside without houses. A long mesquite tree drew us like a magnet. Julio called as we got close. No one answered. We crawled under the sheltering branches. There was garbage strewn around, some spray cans, the smell of urine, but no one was there. We spread out our blankets, put our heads down, and hoped for the best. Chapter 10. Keeping our eyes open. The cholos came in the middle of the night. I was in a deep sleep, and so was Julio. They woke us with kicks. There were 6 of them, 2 with flashlights. They said it was their tree. The girl who was with them giggled when they said we owed them rent. She went through our things. We'll just leave, Julio said. Not until you pay, growled their leader, the biggest of the pack. He was wearing baggy clothes and gleaming white sneakers. No money, reported the girl. Nothing in their stuff worth anything. Like the others, she had a triangle of blue dots tattooed on her wrist. All had weird-looking rings of fresh gold paint around their mouths. The boys moved in closer, like wolves to the kill. The youngest one, no older than 10, was keeping a powerful flashlight beam in my eyes. I pulled the coins out of my jeans pocket and told them it was all that I had. An unseen hand struck my wrist and the coins went flying. Hey, you guys, Julio said in a friendly voice. Paisano 27. What's that supposed to mean? Cackled the leader. He had a voice like a crow. It means you let us go, Julio said. They all started laughing. Their leader said, That's the same stupid so-called password we keep hearing in Los Vampiros. You chuntaros, there's no password. It's only a joke going around to be played on lowlifes like you from Honduras or Guatemala or wherever you're from. Now give us your money, the serious money. I didn't mind being called stupid, skinny fool. Chuntaro described how I felt to find myself completely at their mercy. Meanwhile, Julio's face hardened. Suddenly, he looked tough and dangerous, nothing like the boy I had known on the train. Your money, croaked the crow. Try his pants, giggled the girl. The pack moved closer yet. I'll get it myself, Julio growled. A flashlight beam followed his hand as it slid under his belt. Next thing I saw was a blunt piece of metal, out of which jumped a deadly-looking blade. Who wants it? Julio roared as they all jumped back. He started waving the knife wildly, lunging at the cholos. They ran like rats dumped out of a sack, and they didn't come back. I don't believe you, I cried, half in admiration and half in shock. They could have killed us. What if they also had weapons? They would have used them. You had big money after all. Coyote money? I got nothing, same as you. Then why? I was keeping my pants on, that's all. Let's get out of here. Maybe I can find my coins. Those paint heads might come back. Grab your things and let's go. We stumbled across the hillside in the eerie glow from the light towers along the border. Chuntaro, I told myself, how are you going to get across now? We made our way downtown to the to the bus terminal. In the middle of the night, it was full of people who looked half dead. Eventually, a bench opened up. As soon as we sat down, we were joined by a slouching man with a large silver belt buckle. "Where are you going?" He asked. He lit a cigarette. His face was flushed, and he smelled of liquor. "Don't know," Julio said. "We don't have any money to get there." "Ah," the man replied. "You have nothing. Nothing but nothing." The man took a long pull of his cigarette, slowly let it out. "There is money to be made in the desert if you have strong backs." "And if we get caught," Julio replied, "we go to jail for 10 years. Maybe 20 or 30, no?" "What is the matter with you two? You have to think positive, or you'll never get anywhere in life." "Thank you for your advice, senor," Julio said respectfully. "We will consider what you had said." "I'll be around," he said, and shambled away. "Drugs?" I asked when the recruiter had vanished. "What else? They always need mules to replace the ones that get caught." "Are you actually going to consider it, like you said, and risk jail? Do I look like I had a horse for a mother and a jackass for a father? Did you forget that I've already been in prison? Did I make it sound like a holiday in Cancun?" "Sorry if I've irritated you, Julio." "You haven't, Mano. Nogales has. I don't want to spend a minute longer at the bottom of this outhouse than I have to." "I'm with you," I said. He laughed bitterly. "The password is no good, but there's always another way. We just have to keep our eyes open." Daytime found us looking for work at the gas stations, the small groceries, the tourist stops, tire repairs, shoe repairs, and a small factory that made roof tiles. People shook us off. They didn't even want to talk. At the port of entry, we tried to make a little money carrying shopping bags for people returning from the other side, mostly from the Walmart. I recognized the blue bags from the Walmart in Silao. The problem was there were too many kids. It was like a flock of sparrows going for the same few seeds. We didn't have any luck. My hunger felt like a clenched fist. At the taqueria, Julio bought tacos for both of us. He sat on a low wall close by and ate very slowly. Julio was watching a young man trying to buy something to eat. He had a chest of a bull and arms like tree trunks. I started paying attention and noticed that he could barely speak Spanish. He looked as Mexican as anybody, yet it was all he could do to order 2 tacos. He had an American $10 bill in his hand. "10?" the vendor said. The young man looked very confused as he handed over the bill. The vendor hadn't missed the confusion. In fact, he took advantage of it. He put the $10 away quickly and started helping the next person. The young man stood there for a second with his tacos. Then he turned away, looking lost as a bird that just hit a window. For some reason, he didn't understand Mexican money. He had just paid more than 10 times too much. Julio jumped up and got in the middle of it. With some weak excuse I couldn't hear, the vendor had to hand over the change. The young man with the muscles gave half to Julio as a gift, then sat beside us on the wall and started in on his tacos. Julio spoke enough English to have a conversation with him. I didn't understand a word except his name, Hector. Later, as we went our separate ways, Julio told me that Hector was from Colorado. He'd been deported only the day before. Hector hadn't been in Mexico for 19 years, ever since crossing on his mother's back. He grew up American, but without documents. He graduated from high school and was a football star, American football. He had a good job at a place that sold farm machinery. A week ago, he'd had a little traffic accident. When he couldn't show the police a driver's license, even a fake one, they took him in, and then the Border Patrol got a hold of him. "Can you believe it?" Julio said. "What's he going to do?" "Pay the coyotes to take him across." "The cholos? Through one of the tunnels?" He told me he'd almost been tricked into trying that. just in time. He found out that the Americans had recently closed the tunnels on the other side with chain-linked gates. They only open them up when it's flooding, so the cholos won't live inside without getting pinned against them and drown. You know what, Victor? Before it gets dark, we better find out where it's safe to sleep. Our search ended at the Plaza de Toros, which turned out no longer to be a bullfighting arena. The city had turned it into a place for the homeless to sleep. We went inside to take a look. The protected places under the colonnades were already marked off by families and filled with their belongings, with kids keeping guard. No matter, there was no sign of rain. We spread out our blankets in the middle of the arena. Julio was in a bad mood the next day, and I knew why. He had been counting on the tunnels. I asked him what he thought about hiking east or west along the border, then crossing someplace past the metal wall ended. I'm afraid it may come to that, Julio said darkly. From what I've heard, it's a long, long way across the desert. 4, 5 days, maybe a week. Without a coyote to guide us, what would be our chances? If the tunnel wasn't closed and the password had worked, what were you going to do once you got to the other side? Get back on the train on the way to Phoenix. It goes through Tuscan. From what I hear, those are cities where we would blend right in. Tuscan is where my friend was going, to his brother's house, but he had coyote money. There has to be a way if we keep our eyes open. Meanwhile, we need to figure out how to feed our stomachs.